What's good? It's Woog. So I'm really trying to make sense of one of the more interesting disparities in opinion, I think, in recent boxing history. Chris Mannix, the unofficial scorecard on Canelo versus Billy Joe Saunders, scored the fight 5 rounds to 3. And as I'm watching the fight, I'm with my brother. We have a few others. And I'm texting my cousin and my dad and a couple other friends. And as they are watching the fight, they are texting me their round by round. And so at the time of the stoppage, at the end of the 8th round, we all basically had it 5 rounds to 3. Billy Joe Saunders. So Chris Mannix, again, the unofficial judge of the DAZN broadcast, had it 5-3 Saunders. I had it 5-3 Saunders, with Canelo scoring the emphatic 8th round. It's like, yeah, it's 5-3 now, which means that after 7, I had it 5 rounds to 2 Saunders. But then I look on social media and, I did a preview video and then I did a final thoughts. So I did 2 preview-like videos and then a reaction video, and it's almost unanimous. Like, even like folks that agree with me in general with a lot of the fights that we see. Like, we kind of had the same idea of how Virgil Ortiz Jr. versus Maurice Hooker was going to play out. So it's all, or at least mostly, people who I think to be like super reasonable with very intelligent and varying intelligent perspectives on these different fights. And almost everybody is saying, like, what the hell are you talking about? I had Canelo up 6-2. I had Canelo up 6. So many people had Canelo up 6-2. I'm like how? I'm trying to think of another fight where it's just this starkly contrasting views of the fight. And there's a lot in between. There are a lot of like 5-3 Canelos. Very, very few Saunders, though, just across the board. There are some, but I was just shocked at how near, it felt nearly unanimous. The idea was that Canelo not only was up, but was having like little to no difficulty. Like, they're like, yeah, I gave Billy Joe like the 5th and 6th, or a lot of 5th and 6th Billy Joe and the rest Canelo. And there's obviously a lot of like dispute over round 1, which was a very inactive round. Nobody grabbed it by the horns in round 1. It was just what style you thought was the slightly more effective style. Very little to go on, though, in the first round. But yeah, rounds 2, 3, 4, 7, it either swings this way or swings this way. So I'm wondering, where is the disconnect in this Canelo versus Billy Joe fight? And I don't think that it just has to do with, like, I don't think that everybody who gave it to Canelo or had Canelo up on the cards was of the mindset that, yeah, if the person's coming forward and like seeming to be the aggressor, then he should win the round. I don't even think that it's like that it's that school of thought that's giving Canelo the fight, because a lot of the same people, will pick the back foot style fighter in other fights. So I'm like, okay, so it's not that. I think some of it's just a total disrespect of Billy Joe's punching power. I do think that there's something to when Billy Joe is letting his hands go. I think a lot of people just weren't buying it, or they were seeing Canelo appear totally unaffected by it. So it's like, okay, that didn't do much. Whereas when Canelo lets his hands go, it's just, he's throwing to the body just viciously. And he's got this blank face, Michael Myers, like, kind of a sinister but calm look where he's like, yeah, you know what I just did. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, and he sells it. He's like, he convinces me. And I think, reputation wise coming into the fight, I think that it matters. Like, if people are saying or thinking, yeah, you carry some pop with your punch. And I don't think any of that, benefit of the doubt was granted to Billy Joe in the case of the people who had Canelo winning like 6 rounds to 2. To me, at least 5, 6, and 7 felt relatively easy to score for Billy Joe. So that's at least 3. So then round 1, you could, have your debate on who was the least boring and inactive in round 1. Who did just a little bit, something where they somewhat edged it out. I almost don't even like talking about round 1. It was so uneventful. But like 2 is debated, because I think I gave 2 to Billy Joe, and I think the vast majority of the people gave 2 to Canelo. And then 3, 4, I thought, yeah, Canelo's winning these. Is Billy Joe in trouble? Because he's going to need to figure it out. And then by 5, 6, and 7, I'm like, yeah, he's, actually putting the combinations together. He's actually kind of, in a way, walking Canelo into some of these shots. But again, I don't think that anybody was saying, ooh, that was effective, or ooh, Canelo's in trouble. It was like none of that, even though I was thinking, okay, how much energy is, Canelo expending now in the 5th, 6th, and 7th when he was losing those rounds in trying to trap Billy Joe and walk him down. I was convinced that anytime he did walk Billy Joe into a rope, that he was very effective, and he took advantage of that every time and just splashed him, usually to the body. And he was setting up that uppercut, or whatever you want to call that, that right hand that he was throwing, and he was putting his hips into that thing too. But he was trying to catch Billy Joe leaning to that side a couple times. It was only in that last case where his fist met Billy Joe's face at that intersection. Home run, right? Broke his face. If he hit him in the jaw with it, I think he would have been dropped. If he hit him in the side of the head with it, I think his balance would have been compromised. But I think Canelo was always very effective when he had Billy Joe, and even in the middle of the ring. It wasn't only when he had him trapped. I think that he had some success in the middle of the ring with his body shots specifically. But in the 5th, 6th, and 7th, I thought that he was getting hit more and started to look even more frustrated, and more like the more he was trying to press the issue a little bit, the more he was kind of taking 2, 3 shots. So, a few of the rounds are in question, and then a couple of the others were easier to score. Again, 3, 4 for Canelo, obviously 8 for Canelo. That was basically the fight-ending, crushing round for Canelo. But yeah, this one feels a lot different than a lot of other disputed types of fights where you've got a crowd who thought that it went this way, and then a crowd that thought that it went that way. This one seems a little bit different because I truly believe that everybody who's thinking whatever they're thinking, they feel pretty damn convinced in that. So then I'm thinking, okay, from a technical standpoint, what is happening? Is it reputation based? Is it that one fighter is clearly throwing heavier punches that even sound different? There's a different percussive sound, and Canelo's always framed his punches well. I think that his way of framing punches scored the second fight in his favor with the judges, because he looks so demonstrative when he starts throwing his punches. And then he's got, Triple G of all people on his back foot trying to throw 50 jabs in the round. Like, who does that to Triple G? Now, I do think Triple G should have been awarded the win in the first fight. I feel like the second fight could have gone either way. But we don't need to, relitigate that one right now. I'm just more wondering where the disconnect lies between the people who thought Billy Joe was having success. By the way, Mike Coppinger, from The Athletic, had Billy Joe Saunders up, I believe. And again, obviously Mannix. But yeah, the vast majority of people, I watched Morning Combat with Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell, and they both, Brian Campbell had it more even, something like 5-3 Canelo or 4-4, one of those two, I believe. But Luke Thomas just had Canelo basically owning it, saying you might be able to give 1 or 2 to Saunders. I'm like, what? And I watch Luke Thomas's dissected segments. He does more MMA-based dissected segments where he gets into the real nitty-gritty. And he's just a very reasonably minded cat who watches a ton of fights. And I think that a lot of the people who, I've communicated with, leave in the comments saying, what the hell are you talking about? And I'm thinking, damn, am I tripping here? And I feel like I might be. I might need to just rewatch this fight, a second and third time, and just see if I come away with a different takeaway. But let me ask you guys a question. Can you guys think of another fight where it seemed like there were these vastly different ideas and just visions of the fight and opinions of the fight? Can you think of another fight that it was this bipolar? Like Corey Spinks versus Ricardo Mayorga. That's another back foot guy who, beat the guy who throws punches like a helicopter propeller. Mayorga was a dangerous man at the time that Corey Spinks upset him by back foot boxing and just, what do they say? Putting on a boxing clinic just taking Mayorga to school, and it was judged as such. So I'm wondering, were there like tons of people who were watching this thinking Ricardo Mayorga should have, gotten that decision against Corey Spinks? Now, this could be apples and oranges. I'm not saying that Mayorga Spinks was anything like Canelo Saunders, but I'm just saying, like, the whole cat and mouse style of fighting, does the mouse ever get rewarded? Should the mouse get rewarded or awarded that round? And under what circumstances do you award the mouse over the cat that's clearly, or at least appears to be, on the hunt? I'm not saying that Billy Joe Saunders made Canelo look like David Lemieux. I'm not saying anything like that. I just think that he had more success, deserves a little more credit than a lot of people are giving him. But yeah, let me know if you could think of any other fights that were this, this way or that way. I know Mayweather versus Jose Luis Castillo is very controversial. Manny Pacquiao versus Timothy Bradley. Oscar De La Hoya versus Felix Trinidad. Oscar De La Hoya versus Ike Corte is another controversial one, close one. And then obviously Canelo versus Triple G, 1 and 2, and then before that it was Canelo versus Erislandy Lara. But I don't know. I just think that there's something feels different about this one, because I feel like everybody who's weighing in is making sense in their opinion. Like, Canelo is hitting harder, clearly. Like, one of Canelo's shots might really equal 3 or 4 Billy Joe Saunders shots. But yeah, I just need a little deeper of a dive into why these scorecards are so this way or that way, and why Mike Coppinger and Chris Mannix will see the fight 5-3 is still a close scorecard. But I think that we've at least been able to pinpoint what the more certain rounds are. 3 of the ones for Canelo being 3, 4, and 8. So we know that the round 1 we know is up in the air. 2, there seem to be 2 different camps. I thought that Saunders won. It seems like most people thought Canelo won round 2. And then you've got to decide on what to do with 5, 6, and 7. So at least we know what the controversial rounds are. But I just thought that it was interesting that this one remains a mystery, where it's like one side is even hearing the opinion of the other side saying, what the hell were you watching? You know what I mean? Like, everybody could tell that De La Hoya Corte was close. So everybody was in agreement. It was like, okay, did you do it this way or that way? But this one, it's like what the hell are you talking about type of acknowledgement of the other vision or opinion. You know what I mean? So yeah, please leave your comments in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. Yeah, we're gonna get more into the path forward for Canelo and all the other fights coming up. But yeah, that one was really interesting and odd to me. But yeah, thanks for tuning in.